So, hello and welcome to another episode of Tolkien with Friends. Today, we're very excited to welcome our friend Amber, who you probably know as Critique Geek on TikTok and Instagram. Thank you for joining us today, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we've been so excited, and also we love it when we have our no offense to the boys that we have on our podcast sometimes, but I love it when it's just a bunch of ladies in the room talking about Tolkien because I feel like it doesn't happen enough. There's always like a dude, you know what I mean? So I love it when we have all lady episodes. It's just fun for us.
I agree. It's a very male dominated fandom still, and I feel like there's often times where ladies and femme folks in the fandom get spoken over. So to have an all lady podcast, that's great.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Mm-hmm.
So now sometimes when folks join us for the first time, I ask them like how they were introduced to Tolkien. But I think now, since we're pretty close to the release of Rings of Power, I would like to ask you, because we know you're a hardcore Tolkien nerd. We know, like, you've had TikToks talking about how your favorite is the Silmarillion. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, that's pretty nerdy. So, so let's talk about like what we're most looking forward to in this show. Based on the trailers and like the things that we've seen so far from the cast and the showrunners.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, when they first announced it, I was hesitant, right? 'Cause, we're all so fond of the books, and then the Peter Jackson trilogy. We don't talk about The Hobbit. The Peter Jackson trilogy was, a really great adaptation. So at first I was like, do we need this? Particularly because, the state's not allowing anyone to adapt the Silmarillion at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of as I learned more about it and about the folks involved and the cast involved, I was like, all right, I'm excited. I'm here for this. I also so just a quick background, I have a degree in literature and a degree in film. And like one of the most
Nice.
important things, one of the most important things I could tell anyone who's a fan of like any franchise is if you can like in your head divorce the concept of the book and the film being the exact same thing, like if you could just let them be two different art forms, you
Yeah.
will enjoy it so much more.
It's so true. It's so true. And I feel like we see that a lot with, here when we're just talking about Lord of the Rings, like, because there's things that they change where it's like, I might have not done it that way, but I can totally see why they would, and it still, like, absolutely works. And then I feel like with Rings of Power, it's like another notch of that because they're not really working with like Gandalf is able to just say straight up his actual dialogue, and they're able to just pull scenes exactly from Lord of the Rings. But since they're tackling the Second Age, they're dealing with like an outline and like a basic idea of what happens, and they have a lot of, space to play, I feel like, and to explore other things, like ideas and stuff that are mentioned, but then like fully flesh them out in a lot of different ways. So I'm really excited to see how they do that. Like, for example, with, I know a character you're excited about is Bronwyn.
Oh, love of my life already.
I know, like, I think, and like getting to know the cast members a little bit more at this point, I'm like, yes, like everybody is giving me the correct vibes. You know what I mean? Like, they care about these characters, they care about this world, and like I couldn't ask for more, And so with things like Bronwyn and Arondir, I think this is going to be a side. This is just me speculating, but like a side of the story with kind of the corruption of the men of Middle Earth, not necessarily the Númenóreans. Like, I feel like Sauron is just going to be like an undercurrent for a while, like not really showing himself, but we're going to start see. So I feel like they're going to be a part of like that very Middle Earth conflict. Like we have the elves doing their thing, we have the Númenóreans doing their thing, and then like what the heck is everyone else up to? And I feel like we're going to see that with them, since Arondir is supposedly a Sylvan elf, so he's not really like involved with that like Noldor nonsense.
Yeah, well, and the village that Bronwyn's from is called Tir Harad now. So we're either in Harad proper or very, very close to it. So I think people kind of have to like keep in mind when you're talking about Rings of Power that Numenor was a colonial and imperial force.
Mm-hmm.
They colonized different parts of Middle Earth, Harad being one of them. And so there was a very anti Numenorian sentiment. So that's how, Sauron got his stronghold in different parts of Middle Earth. So I'm really excited to see some nuance brought to that story. Hopefully some empathy
Yeah.
brought to that story, because I feel like the biggest problem for me with Peter Jackson's trilogy is, it was very, how do I put this delicately? It wasn't diverse, and where it did have diversity, it was very, very much stereotyped.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
looking forward to hopefully them correcting that a little bit in Rings of Power.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it was probably like, I mean, like don't feel like Peter's like a bad person, but I just feel like it was very 2000s. You know what I mean? Like late
Yeah.
90s,
It was
like,
definitely a product of the time.
yeah.
We can do
And
better now.
yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's some things that like some people don't really understand, that like we have evolved, like we're doing things a little different now. But I've just loved seeing there is like a good side of TikTok and a good side of Twitter, and I've loved seeing the fans that are really amped up about the show and the possibilities that it brings to the fandom. I'm just thinking about all those little boys and girls who we've never really seen, black or people of color in playing characters in Middle Earth. And I think that there's more women characters leading the charge here. Galadriel even is gonna, like, she has been a character and hasn't been around, but like they're clearly positioning her as like a leading lady now. So I'm really excited about that, and what that just means for like the future generation of Tolkien fans.
Even getting characters of all socioeconomic statuses that are going to be leading characters. Because if you think about the Fellowship, I mean, even Frodo was well off. The
Right.
closest we got to a non-noble, non-rich character was Samwise.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're going to have a whole range.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because, like, Frodo, Merry, Pippin, they're all basically, like, aristocratic hobbits. They don't really have to have a job. But Sam's over here as our gardener, and, obviously there becomes more than that. But, yeah, that's a really great point. Ahnna, do you have any additional? I know we've, like, probably talked about this a lot in the last couple weeks, but
yeah, I don't have anything else to like add about my thoughts of the trailer or the new show, except for the fact that I don't think people realize how important it is for females and people of color and queer people to see characters like themselves in TV. It's hard to describe in words, but it is really, really important to have a diverse cast. And I'm happy that Amazon is making those strides.
Yeah, Ismail, the actor that plays Arondir, just did a beautiful post on Instagram recently describing what the character means to him, because he's always wanted to play an elf and was, told that he couldn't because he's Latina, because he's black.
mm-hmm.
But now we're getting all these diverse characters. And yeah, if it's... Again, how do I say this? If you're not a woman, if you're not a person of color, you may not understand how major this is, especially seeing more folks that look like us in the fantasy genre, where, people of color for so long have been shut out. Mm-hmm. Even female leads, like we didn't get a lot of ladies leading in fantasy until more recently.
Right.
And that's usually just within the YA genre. So
true.
It's very meaningful to see this.
Yeah, and it's funny to me when people are like, well, go write your own, fantasy story. And I'm like, we are? Like, that is happening.
We do. They just don't get adapted.
Yeah, and so it's like, but this is the thing that Amazon was banking on. So, I don't know, like, yeah, yes and, not you know, like they're not mutually exclusive. You can have both, and we will have both, and we shall have both.
It's good.
Yes. Yeah, the El Dorado meme, like both.
Yes,
Both is good.
that meme is my life.
It's so good. That's a great show. So yeah, I think that, you know, there's a lot of ways that they could potentially this story could go. And we don't necessarily have like full confirmation on like all the plot points they're gonna go for and all of that, but I think what we've seen so far with like the dwarves and the elves and like the men and just like hearing the cast and the showrunners speak, I'm like, yeah, these people, they get it, you know, and they're gonna do a great job. Like, I fully believe that they they've got the abilities and the talents that they need in order to make this show happen. And now it's going to be kind of similar to what we're doing with Lord of the Rings, where it's like, yeah, maybe I might do something differently, or maybe I might have like explored a different area. But I mean, that's the kind of the beauty of adaptation, is that like we're kind of getting this story seen through a different lens, and we're seeing it kind of through the filter of like all these different people, like the way the actors interpret their lines, and the way that the cinematographer and, you know, the set designer like put together the shot, you know, and what they do with the script is only like part of it, you know. So I don't know, I think only good things.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see. As I've said before, I've decided to love Bronwyn already, no matter what. If she goes evil, good for her. As you should, Queen. I don't care. She will be my favorite.
I know, like every time there's a shot of Muriel as well, like who's like the Queen Regent of Numenor in this story, I heard her like some of the panel thing that they did after the Hall Age, like that they streamed online. I was like, man, I love you. I don't even care what like, you are the best. Like, she's cool. I know that to be true, no matter what they do with the show.
Oh, she just seems awesome. I've been following her on Instagram. I'm like, I like you. We're good people.
Yeah. And then Sophie, who plays Disa, I think all the ladies in the show just seem so sweet and real and cool. So, here for it.
And more importantly, they all fully understand the impact that this is happening, because it's, you know, it's their lived experience as well.
Yep.
I think that's an amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that they're not like ignoring the fact that some of these fans, I'm putting in quotation marks, have just like lost their minds over this. Like they address it all the time on social, you know, and like retweeting cosplayers and being like, yes, like we're so happy to be doing this. You know, I don't know, I can't remember the exact wording that they've used, but they've clearly very aware of like the impact that they're having even now. And they've, you know, just dealt with it so beautifully, and I'm excited.
Every week, even if I don't post anything new about Rings of Power, like every week, almost every day, I will have at least one person in my comments somewhere saying something negative. And the new favorite excuse is that, oh, we don't care about the diversity, we care about all these other issues. Stop trying to make it about saying we're racist just because we're not worried. I'm like, okay, sure, you may not care about it, but these 10 other comments that I deleted in the past week certainly did.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people use that as a cover to be mad about the show, when like they actually probably are mad about race, you know, but they're trying to cover it up with like dwarf and lady beards, and I'm just like, why are you hung up? You're just trying to be mad, and I don't like. I wish I had all that energy to be angry, because it is exhausting to be that angry. And like think of all the things you could be doing rather than being mad on the internet. I don't know.
That sentiment also implies that race and gender are not a big issue. Like, are there larger issues? I mean, of course there are larger issues, but do you know what I mean? It's like saying that people shouldn't care about those things when we're those are huge factors of people's everyday lives, and
Yeah.
you can't just overlook those things because, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that there's
You'd
a
rather
problem
talk
with
about, bearded ladies. It's how is that
Whenever they say
comparable
that,
to?
yeah, whenever they say that, it reeks of the I don't see color.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
people.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, it gives me this vibe that like racism and misogyny is just like a thought experiment for them, and I'm like, no, this are our lives. This isn't just debating about a TV show. This is how you assholes like actually talk to human beings, like to
Yeah.
their face, that we deal with all the time, and now we're just seeing it leak into the show, and we're not standing for it because like you're not allowed to talk to people like that in real life, and you're not allowed to talk about it in this context of this TV show. Like, I know that to you this is meaningless because your life has always been kind of represented in TV and movies and whatever you want, but they're literally just adding. They're not taking away. So like, I don't understand. It's like mind-boggling.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, so I assume we'll all be tuning in September 2nd, loading up our Amazon Prime accounts. I've heard different people talking about like how they might drop the episodes. Like, I've heard of like maybe they'll drop 2 at the same time, or like, are they going to do it like Disney where it's like at a certain time in the middle of the night, or are they going to do it like Game of Thrones where, HBO does it kind of like in the evening hour? Because I don't know what I'm going to do if they drop it like in the middle of the night, and so it'll be just like hovering over me during my workday when I can't go watch it.
I don't know if you watch any other Amazon TV shows.
Well, the thing with the Amazon shows that I have watched, I always end up watching them like after they're already out, and I didn't pay attention to when they were dropping.
Because with HBO, as a person who watches a lot of HBO and has to plan their life around when certain episodes drop, I don't log on at 8:00 when Game of Thrones or Westworld or anything like that drops, because the servers will crash and you will not have a pleasant time watching. So you have to wait an hour or two. But if Amazon drops them in the middle of the night, and lets people filter in as time zones change, or when people can watch it at their convenience, and you're going to have now this is super technical, but a better streaming experience if the servers don't crash while you're trying to watch this TV show you're really excited about.
That's true.
Yeah, that happened to me with WandaVision. Because I'm on the West Coast, so I was watching it at midnight every week with my friends, and like the amount of times where we just would not be able to get onto Disney Plus for like 15-20 minutes because the servers were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So interested to see what that does, but but I'll probably just tune in after work depending on how that happens with their Friday releases. Also interested to see if they do drop 2 episodes at the same time.
I'm really hoping they pull like they did with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show and release the first episode early. That was nice.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. So, we'll see. Mm-hmm. Keep our eyes glued to our Prime Video account.
The internet will blow up.
I know. Yeah. If good, bad, in between, there will be a response.
Yeah, that is a fact. That is something we can confirm right here, right now.
People will have feelings.
Yeah. Coming soon to a browser near you. So cool. Well, I'm excited. And I'm also very excited about today's episode because, like we were just talking about, our lady characters are important, and that goes for Eowyn as well. So
we're excited because women.
Because women, exactly.
Woo!
So I just love it when she
exists and she does those things. I'm here for it.
Yes.
So let's get into what those things are. So today we're covering the chapters The Rite of the Rohirrim and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, which super roughly responds to like 2 hours and 32 minutes into the extended edition of Return of the King to 2 hours and 55 minutes. So we're looking at like 23 minutes right now. And I also just want to note that while this movie does go into the Pyre of Denethor during some of this, we're going to ignore him and talk about him next time, because
you can always ignore Denethor.
Yeah. So we'll get to him next time. The book hasn't quite gotten there. Peter added him into this part, and we're focusing on the Rohirrim today. So, where we stopped in both the film and the book, the Witch King was confronting Gandalf at the gate, and we heard the horns of the Rohirrim arriving, basically just in the nick of time at this battle. However, we're going to backtrack for a second, because during the ride of the Rohirrim, that happens right before that. In the movie, we only see like the briefest of nods to this chapter during the last segment of the movie that we talked about, where we see Merry and Eowyn talking while the Rohirrim are camping on the road to war. But in the book, Merry notes that Durnhelm, aka who we find out, like, it's Eowyn. It's Eowyn the whole time, but in the book, they were able to that's able to be a surprise, but in the movie, it's obviously Eowyn the whole time. But he notes that Durnhelm never talks, and Merry's essentially ignored by the rest of the writers, and he believes that there's some kind of agreement between Durnhelm and Elfhelm, who's the leader of their company, or Eored, basically to ignore them both, even because they're both not supposed to be there. So in the movie, there's no Elfhelm, and the audience is fully aware it's Eowyn. But it definitely gives a different flavor to the reveal of Eowyn later. So it's really only a surprise for the Witch King in the movie, because we're already in the know. But it's like a bigger surprise for like everyone reading, which is it's kind of cool. But I don't really know how they would have accomplished that in the movie anyway. Unless they had to.
Because even with the helmet on, it's still so clearly Eowyn.
Yeah, it's Eowyn. I mean, like, sorry. But I think the way they handle it works really well. But we're not talking about Eowyn just yet, because the whole purpose of the Ride of the Rohirrim chapter is to show Theoden and crew trying to figure out how they can get to Minas Tirith, because they've sent scouts out. They're told that orcs are pretty much everywhere, and they're trying to be sneaky, But Theoden has found an ally in the Woses, which is a group that lives in the forest that's just like on the other side of the mountains, near Minas Tirith. And according to Elfhelm, the Woses are the wild men of the woods, remnants of an older time they be, living few and secretly, wild and wary as the beasts. They go not to war with Gondor or the Mark, but now they are troubled by the darkness and the coming of the orcs. They fear lest the dark years be returning, as seems likely enough. And when Merry sneaks over to watch Theoden and the riders, which I know that we need Merry as our eyes and ears for this part, but I'm also kind of like, Merry, how is Theoden not going to be like, excuse me, what are you doing here? But he sneaks over and watches when they are meeting with the leader of the Woses, who is Gonburi Gon. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. There's accents over certain parts, but Gonburi Gon. He is reminded of the Pukul men, which, if you remember, are the little statues that line the road to Dunharrow. So it kind of seems to be like these are ancient people. They obviously seem to have a bigger territory once upon a time, if they were all the way back at Dunharrow as well. And now they're kind of confined to this little forest, probably because they don't want to deal with all this men nonsense.
Mood.
Right? I would that's like the vibe I'm getting. And Gonburi Gon explains that they will help as they can, lead them on safe paths away from the roaming orcs and towards the battle, because they know all paths. Wild men lived here before stone houses, before tall men come up out of the water. And so there are two things I'd like to note about this group. Like, the last time we talked about wild men, it was juxtaposed with Saruman, right? It was Saruman convinces the Dunlendings that the Rohirrim are evil and cruel and that they should fight them. And in the book, we've also heard Faramir kind of compare the different types of men. Like, we have the High and the Númenorian men, and then the middle men, who are the Rohirrim, and then the wild men, who we've now seen are, like, examples of which are the Dunlendings and the Woses. And so now we're kind of seeing a separate group of wild men who are aiding our main heroes rather than, like, an adversary or something to, problem. And I really think that they are important to note because, while they have a completely different way of life, it shows that different doesn't mean evil or cruel. And, like, most of the time in Lord of the Rings, when we're given a group that is different from, like, our main guys, they're kind of bad guys. And I feel like this is...
Yeah. Particularly in the films.
Yeah, exactly. But they're cut, and, like, I get it, but also, like, I mean, it was kind of an opportunity, but, I mean, they are kind of shown as, like, primitive, which maybe isn't great, but it is kind of an interesting, like, Tolkien, I think he's really, like, throughout the book, struggling with this idea of, like, because later he gives kind of a description of the men, like, of Harad, and it's not great. Like, I didn't like the way that he described them. And it's very, like, stereotypical or, like, kind of icky. But I feel like, I don't know if that's just me, like, putting this on him, but it kind of feels like you're getting these little touches of him trying to explore that idea of, like, gray morality and also people that aren't necessarily good or necessarily evil, but or more good or, like, on a spectrum of, like, good and evil. And him trying to figure out, like, I just feel like it's kind of like a question mark. Like, he didn't really necessarily fully know how to explore it. But I feel like the Woses are, like, an important example of how, like, he isn't trying to just, like, paint everyone as bad necessarily. I mean, it's like, when you're in a war, I get it. Like, you gotta fight somebody if they're attacking you, right? But this is kind of like just kind of a little nod there to, like, some nuance, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and it's also important to note that Tolkien revised everything, for years. His entire life, he was still revising Middle-earth and the peoples and the lore. So I do think he started out very stereotypical, was relying a lot on the ideas of light and dark as representing good and evil and kind of going from there. He wasn't perfect.
Right.
He was definitely in some ways a product of his time, but he did try. And he tried more than some modern authors do. Like, when he was confronted, when he was corrected and said, hey, this is a stereotype, or this is maybe not what you intended, he at least would go back and revise things.
Right.
So,
like he did with the dwarves.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that this is, like, when we're talking about Tolkien, like, to me, it's like, yes, these books are, like, great, and they were so special, and they do some really beautiful things, but at the end of the day, this is a human man that is writing them, right? And, like, I think he was super smart. Like, he was obviously an Oxford professor, and most professors I know have, like, they're pretty cool, in generally speaking. You know what I mean? Like, I think that you can see him kind of dealing with these different ideas that he doesn't, like, fully get to flesh out, because with these Lord of the Rings, it's like he is actually trying to get these published so that they can, like, sell them, whereas with, like, the Silmarillion, there was he never thought he was told explicitly that they weren't going to be published, so he kept, like, going back to that and fixing it, and I feel like he probably, given more time, would have tried to change other things about Lord of the Rings too. I don't know. So I just thought that they're an interesting group to include, and I think that you kind of see him, like, struggling with this idea of, like, how do I paint these, like describe these different groups with, and with some nuance. And so that's kind of why I think they're interesting. And a little thing that you wouldn't really know if you just watch the movies, because they're not even referenced. They're not even a nod, So it's
Right.
not like
And
they're
that's
included.
really an important theme throughout all the books and the histories. No one's inherently good or evil.
Mm-hmm.
It's the choices that they make that lead them down one path or another.
Exactly. And on another note, I want to point out, so like Gonbury Gone talks about how long that they've been there since before the tall men, which have got to be the Númenóreans, since they're supposed to be like 8 feet tall. And they come up out of the water, capital W, so ocean, right? And that's definitely where the Númenóreans came out, because they're an island nation. So let's talk about Rings of Power right around the corner. And we know that they mostly have the rights. I'm sure that there's more that they're not telling us, but they're relying on Lord of the Rings and the appendices, and like maybe The Hobbit, but there's not really anything in The Hobbit for this. Will we see the Woses and the Rings of Power?
I'm not sure. I don't know. There's just so much to cover.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, who knows? Like, depending on what they do with the men of Middle Earth, I mean, they've committed to 5 seasons, right? It's a possibility. They could toss them in. They're canonically a part of the timeline. So.
True.
I mean, I'd be interested for them to, like, explore that. And maybe it's not even, like, a fully, full outline, but maybe they're, like, in a scene somehow briefly.
Well, I don't think it's going to take a few seasons for us to actually get to the fall of Númenor.
Yeah.
I think it's probably not going to be till a little bit later in the show. But in theory, if we do cover all that, and we do cover the surviving Númenóreans coming to Middle Earth, they will have to encounter someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, because we're seeing the Harfoots, and do the Harfoots. The Harfoots mostly keep to themselves, I think, at this point, but we shall see.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just like, wait a second. I mean, they could. It's possible. So,
Right, and because they are in Lord of the Rings, like the actual text of Return of the King, they do have access to it.
Exactly. So, I'd be interested for them to go there and add them in somewhere. Especially when it comes to if they do deal with the, explicitly the colonization side of Númenóreans, and just like I'm sure because at the Tolkien kind of puts it like Númenóreans show up, and at first it's like to teach it's not like a colonizer thing. At first it's like them teaching the middlemen, and like everybody's benefiting from it essentially. And then as Númenor starts to turn to darkness, you could say, or like starts to fall, then it kind of switches to, like, he basically says, like, and then it's like power colonization, not good stuff. So it would be interesting if they had, like, if they weren't, maybe they're just kind of like in the background, and then maybe at some point when they're like, no, like, we don't actually want you here, and how they might react to that, because there's clearly a reduction in like the area that they occupy, and they're kind of limited to this one forest by the time we get to Return of the King.
Kind of jumping off that they came there to quote unquote teach. Yeah, that's not so different from history.
Yeah.
Right. The Spanish just came over to quote unquote teach indigenous peoples things, right?
Right.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, like, how you see him, like, writing it. It's him, like, obviously trying to paint Númenor as, like, they're chill, and then they're not so chill, but I think, and especially with the speeding up of the timeline, I'm sure that it's probably just going to be, like, not so chill earlier,
Yeah, and I think we're really going to see a dichotomy. My prediction is that we're going to see a huge dichotomy between Miriel and Ar-Pharazôn. I think,
Mm-hmm.
and his takeover kind of changing the
Yeah.
culture maybe around Numenor.
Yeah, I kind of feel like she's gonna be between a rock and a hard place in some ways, because I feel like she's clearly friends with Galadriel, right? Based on the
Mhm.
trailer, and I feel like it's gonna be one of those things where she wants to help Galadriel, and maybe she does at the outset, but then our Farazan, well, he's maybe not our, but Farazan, whatever they're calling him, he's given me Rasputin, like he's given me like counselor to Muriel. I don't remember what title they actually gave him on the show, but like I feel like he is going to be kind of like undermining her secretly, and like getting people to think poorly of the elves. You know, he's gonna be like that guy, or and like obsessed with death kind of thing, and probably going to make it seem like all of these people in Numenor don't want to deal with the elves anymore. They don't want to help them. They don't want anything to do with them. And then Muriel's going to be like, well, what do I do? You know, like, how am I supposed to lead? And when everyone's so divided, you know?
Well, and I think an important thing that tells me about Muriel's characterization is the fact that in her poster, she's holding the white flower,
Mm-hmm.
from Nimloth, the tree.
Right.
To me, that just shows like kind of the symbolism there. It's like an allegiance with, truth, the light,
Mm-hmm.
calls back the trees of Valinor and all that good stuff.
Yeah. It just makes me think of how, like we're about to get with Eowyn, you know, like when you have a role and you have people like Aragorn and Faramir who are like always good, you know, they always make the right call somehow, some way. Like they're like driven by this idea of duty. But I think it would be interesting if they explored how there's duty and then there's doing the right thing. Sometimes they're not always synonymous, you know. um so yeah.
Right, and I think we have to see that in
Mm-hmm.
the television show. It's because the rules of film are different than the rules of literature and the formatting
Right.
and all that. In literature, you can have a character who is purely good,
Mm.
and all
Yeah.
that, but the kind of like the structure and the rules around writing film dictate.
Right.
That's why we had an Aragorn who, maybe questioned some things. That's why they had to ruin Faramir's character. No,
Yeah, Anna didn't like it when they said he was ruined.
listen, David Wenham's still fine in the role,
Yeah,
and he does good in the end. I just wish that they'd made him a little less emo, I guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't. Yeah, I think that he was like, especially in the book, like he obviously knows who his dad is and that he sucks, but he didn't. He was just like, well, you know, so be it if Daddy gets mad, you know. But in the book or in the movie, he's like, well, gotta prove myself to Dad, and it's like, no, actually, no. You can make this call, boy, and then he finally does. But you know, it's different. It's different. But like, then there are other characters that they kind of don't touch as far as like that kind of story arc kind of thing, you know. So it's interesting. Like I feel like they were like, Denethor is shitty enough. We don't need to make him shittier, or like they don't even really make Denethor redeeming. I don't know. But Gandalf pretty much solid the whole way through. It's
Yeah.
just Gandalf. It's just always Gandalf. Um, but yeah. Any other thoughts about these guys that were left out of the movie, the Woses, or just like their journey to Minas Tirith?
I think we all know what we're here for.
Yeah. Okay, great. So now, cut back to the horns are blowing. Like in the movie, you know, the riders of Rohan show up, and you know, they're looking down on this insane amount of orcs. And I mean, just the way that they have put this together, like I was rewatching it this morning and I was like, actual chills, you know, when these guys show up. And it's Theoden is the moment right there. Like, his speech to the Rohirrim, like, the cuts to eyes, like, Eowyn's eyes, like, totally filled with terror at the insanity that they're about to walk into, and everyone's screaming death. I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect. I'm not gonna change that scene. Like, I have no notes. I have no notes. It's so good. It's so good. Ahnna, do you have any thoughts about, like, the beginning of this battle?
In Peter style, it is very powerful and dramatic, and I think, you know, this battle definitely needed to feel that way.
Yeah, I agree. He could have toned down Helm's Deep and left it all for this. You know what I mean?
Listen, though, Helm's Deep. I love that sequence. Fun short anecdote. I used to go to a gym that had like a movie theater section. Like, it was just a big screen in a dark room with all the ellipticals and like treadmills.
What?
And yeah.
That's the gym I want to go to.
Yeah.
So one week they played Lord of the Rings, the extended editions, as their movies. And I'm telling you, when it came time for the Battle of Helm's Deep, I have never done so much cardio before in my life.
I can imagine. Yeah, you're just like.
Oh yeah. Okay. I hate working out. I don't even go to the gym anymore, but I would still go if they did that every week.
That you could get me there. Yeah. On a big screen? Absolutely. It hit different.
Wow.
Yeah, but...
And if I have to bust my booty to do it, I would.
If there's one thing Peter Jackson did really, really well in Lord of the Rings, it was those battle sequences and making them dramatic, but still keeping the story flowing.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely does that. And, like, with this scene, he kind of smushes all of the sequence of events together. Like, the Muma Killer's supposed to show up after the Witch King is dead. Aragorn's supposed to show up, like, way towards the end of the battle when they think they're gonna lose again, you know? But he just, like, all of it kind of happens at once. But that's fine. Like...
Yeah, it actually shocked me, like, how much... Okay, so, like, within this chapter, right, it's technically the Rohirrim arriving and then battling at Minas Tirith. It shocked me about how much runtime, like, these first 2.5 pages of the chapter take in the film itself. Because he really stretched out this beginning battle sequence before we get to Eowyn's big moment. Because it happens really early in the chapter.
Yeah, and, like Eowyn's moment, it's like... Yeah, it's like... Because the beginning of it, he kind of, like... Tolkien just kind of, like, swats over, like, Theoden's doing a great job, you know? And then the Witch King shows up and it's like, bitch, I don't want you to be doing a good job, you know? Before all the other stuff happens, but like Peter kind of takes all of these events and he builds up to this moment a little bit more, which totally understandable. And one thing that I do want to juxtapose like Theoden with Denethor really quick is that like last time we saw Gandalf kind of berating Denethor for like he's like dressed in mail and stuff, but he's not out on the field, like he's not leading his men, and he draws a comparison to Denethor acting like the Witch King and that he's leading from behind. But then even the Witch King is out on the battlefield while Denethor hides on the 7th level of Minas Tirith. And then we've got multiple references about how Theoden was ever before his men and he could not be overtaken. Like he is leading that charge, and they do it in the book or in the movie as well as in the book. And so I really liked that, especially since we're kind of seeing them so close together. You know, to compare these two leaders of men. And I think Theoden we stand at Theoden. So like,
yeah, and that's kind of consistent throughout, just in terms of when he's representing leaders. Like Aragorn in the final battle, he's leading. He's always leading. He's out in front as well, versus, you know, more in the movies, but in general, Saruman.
Yeah.
Leading from his tower.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like it's a point that he, you know, explicitly makes, you know, like even if you're the baddest bitch out there, you're in the back and you suck for that. And also an interesting point in the book is that for a split second, for like one quick paragraph at the beginning of the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, so we had seen that the Rohirrim were showing up. It backtracks to see how the Rohirrim got there, and then it goes forward again with where we were a second ago, with kind of the Witch King being like, "The fuck is this?" With the horns blowing, and it switches to his perspective in a way. It says, "But it was no orc chieftain or brigand that led the assault upon Gondor. The darkness was breaking too soon, before the date that his master had set for it." And now I'm imagining Sauron with a calendar and Barad-dûr, like, this is the day that we will take over the world. Fortune had betrayed him for the moment. The world had turned against him. Victory was slipping from his grasp, even as he stretched out his hand to seize it. But his arm was long. He was still in command, wielding great powers. King, Ringwraith, Lord of the Nazgul. He had many weapons. He left the gate and vanished. And I think this is the only time that we get to see, like, the Witch King's kind of thinking. And it's just an interesting timing considering what's about to happen to him. But I did like kind of getting to see that for a split second about him just being like, what is happening? Like, this is supposed to be my moment, and it's not working out. It is not working out for you. So then, let's just talk about Eowyn. So,
yes.
Let's
always talk about Eowyn.
Let's just talk about Eowyn. So, I was just thinking about this, and I just love, like, that how she's there in the first place, Like, again, talking about, like, duty and, your role in this Middle-earth. We've got Merry and Eowyn right now, and neither of them are supposed to be there in a number of ways. Merry probably least of all. But Eowyn especially, I think she's really the catalyst for Merry being there. And Eowyn also is like, she's been told by multiple people to stay back, lead her people while the men are away. And she's like, absolutely not. And like, normally we see with Aragorn and folks like him is that like, yeah, like doing your duty and it's, doing that thing that you promised to do or whatever, like it works out. But like, think about it for a second. Like if Eowyn had been like, yeah, I won't go. I'll just stay back here. There's no way you get the end of the Witch King, And there's no way you get Merry there either, which also is kind of pivotal to ruining the Witch King. So in this scene, I think it feels pretty accurate in the movie, but there is like more dialogue. And we've got you don't come between the Nazgul and his prey, because everyone loves it when you speak about yourself in the third person, aka Witch King. And he threatens to take her to the houses of lamentation, beyond all darkness, where thy flesh shall be devoured, and thy shriveled mind to be left naked to the lidless eye. I thought you would like that, Ahnna.
Spooky.
So I wanted to throw that in there. I think I saw like the Tolkien professor one time where someone was like, what are the houses of lamentation? And I'm like, what's
their purpose?
I think this is a guy that is like making shit up on the spot and is like, we're gonna mess you up, man. He still thinks Eowyn is
random person trying to fight me.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, not what you're dealing with. So I feel like, I'm sure that there is, I don't think it's like an official Houses of Lamentation, probably just something icky in Minas Morgul or Barad-dûr or something. Amber, do you have any thoughts about the Houses of Lamentation?
I'm trying to remember because I know I've read this before.
Is there like an explicit reference to it elsewhere?
Because I feel like he's basically saying, I'm not going to kill you, I'm going to take you to Mordor and you're going to wish you were dead.
Yeah.
Is what I get from this.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, yeah, I mean, probably. I believe it. But I love that Eowyn is just like, do what you will, but I will hinder it if I may. And that's where he's like, he says, no man may hinder me. In the movie, they make it, no man can kill me.
Right.
And which is like, in the movie, Gandalf has said that, like, it is said that, no man can kill him. And so they're obviously, like, calling back to that. Mm-hmm. But here, he's specifically responding to what she says. And so I think that this is, like, the moment where it's the only, like, thing that's significantly changed is that Eowyn laughs. And that's, like, the moment where, like, Mary kind of starts to realize who it is. Mm-hmm. It seemed that Durnhelm laughed, and the clear voice was like the ring of steel. But no living man am I. You look upon a woman. Eowyn, I am, Eowyn's daughter. You stand between me and my lord and kin. Begone, if you be not deathless. For living or dark undead, I will smite you if you touch him. Ooh, I love it. And I love that her doing this makes him makes the ring wraith, our witch king. He pauses as if in sudden doubt, and I just imagined him being like, well, I never considered that this prophecy thing meant a lady.
But yeah, it's not happened.
I wonder if this is something, I know we keep going back to Rings of Power, but I wonder if this is something they might explore more about because we're going to see this is the first time we're going to see maybe the characters who end up becoming the Nazgul, mm-hmm. because it's never clearly defined in any of Tolkien's works. So I don't know if we're going to see the birth of the prophecy. Are we going to find out that some of the ring wraiths were women? I think that's a possibility. I know some people don't like that interpretation, but they were great kings and leaders amongst men.
Right. True. Yeah, that's interesting that if there are some women ring wraiths, and then for, our Lord of the Nazgul to not account for women as, like, a threat. I don't know.
Or do they perhaps know that women are a threat in the prophecy? There's no way to tell.
Yeah, exactly.
There's lots of interpretations that can be made there.
Yeah. But it definitely seems to have just crossed his mind just now that Eowyn maybe has a card, like an ace in the hole.
Oh, no.
And this is the moment that Mary is, like, kind of starts to get the courage to start, like, moving towards the Witch-king. And, in the book, it's like, this is the moment where, his fell beast is like, rawr, and then she chopped its head off, and then he gets really pissed. Mm-hmm. And Mary is able to stab him in, like, the back of the leg, and he, had never known such anguish. I think we saw that again with, like, Shelob. Like, all these hobbits cause an anguish to people that never felt so much anguish in their lives. And so he falters, and that's when Eowyn is able to be like right in the face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, first off, I also just want to give a huge round of applause to Peter and team, probably Philip and Fran, for making it so that Theoden says his last words to Eowyn in the movie. Yeah. And not Mary. So Mary is the person that Theoden talks to as he's dying. And even Éomer shows up in time for Theoden to say a couple words like, okay, you're going to be king now. Meanwhile, Eowyn is, like, nearby, like, passed out from, like, saving him from
saving everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so much more emotionally impactful to have them share that moment together. She who, like, he was her only father figure for so much of her life, and then it's so much better.
And, like, to add to that, like, they do the callback to when in the earlier in Two Towers, after Theoden had gotten out of, like, Saruman's spell, and the first person he sees is Eowyn, and
he says, such a good callback.
I know your face. It's beautiful. And so they do it again here. And if you're not crying, what is like? It's so good. It's so good. And I love it. It's so emotional. And then when Éomer finds her body and, Karl Urban is, like, putting his whole soul into that scream, like,
His
Just
whole Carl Lucy.
yeah.
I love Carl here.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's so great. It's so well done. And I'm like I
I also,
understand that like Mary is our eyes and ears for a lot of this, but like no. Why are you the one talking to? No, I don't want
yeah. I also appreciate just the dialogue change because obviously Eowyn has this really powerful speech that they don't give her in the film. They just have her say, "I am no man," and that line just like cuts like a knife. So
yeah.
I think that was a smart choice because cinematically, like, and there's already so many speeches in Lord of the Rings, and I feel
Yeah.
like that's something you have to be used sparingly in order for it to be effective. So
Yeah.
we just had Theoden's big
Right. Dad, they
moment.
cried. Yeah, and Fear
We're
no
gonna
further.
have Aragorn's later, like cutting hers down to just a line that's like snappy and to the point.
Yeah.
Looks great on a t-shirt.
So true. Yeah, I really like that. I think the only thing that's interesting is that like she I mean, the way they do it in the movie definitely makes more sense, like physically. Like she has already had her like arm busted, which is true for for both. And um, so like I get like you don't have the energy to give a speech right now. Like you are
You are
standing
distracted.
with the Lord of the Nazgul in front of you, So I get it. I just kind of like that she laughs in his face because
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool move. I don't know how she wasn't like peeing her pants a little bit. Good for her. Good for Eowyn in book and movie. Just, I love you. I love you, and that's all.
It's a good
We love
moment.
Eowyn so much in this house.
Yes. So I love that she gets to say goodbye to Theoden. It makes so much more sense, you know. Um, so there's like changes happening in Return of the King that I'm like, yes, go for it. You did it. Two Towers, not so much, but Return of the King, we're back on track. I feel like what they're doing. Um, and then so I do want to touch on like Mary's dagger quickly because this is
Mm-hmm.
something that I wanted to talk about since like we went to the Barrow Downs with Tom Bombadil, like way back when, on like episode 7 or 8. Um, so to backtrack a little bit, and Amber, you can help me out if I miss any points, but like early in the Third Age, descendants of the Númenóreans, like the Dúnedain, lived in Eriador, which is like the area of the Shire, isn't like all of that area over there, Arnor, near the Shire, and the Witch-king had taken up residence in Angmar to the north, and they were
Mm-hmm.
fighting each other for a long time. And just like paraphrasing and like shortening it. But like at one point, the Barrow Downs outside of the Old Forest, that had been graves of kings and like fancy people of the Dúnedain, essentially. But the Witch King, being the Witch King, had sent evil spirits to live there. So by the time we get to it in Lord of the Rings, it's just like a spoopy place where you don't want to be. You avoid it. But after Tom saves the hobbits, so they run naked on the grass, as we recall, and Tom has them take some items from the Downs, notably daggers. So in the movie, we see Merry and Pippin getting daggers from Galadriel,
Mm-hmm.
but the history of the daggers is what like kind of gives them their oomph at this moment. So when Merry stabs the Witch King, and then the blade, it's like smoking like a dry branch that has been thrust in a fire. And as he watched it, it writhed and withered and was consumed. So passed the sword of the Barrow Downs. Like, Tolkien's like, remember this? Remember where he got this? Work of Westerness. But glad would he have been to know that its fate who wrought it slowly long ago in the North Kingdom when the Dúnedain were young, and chief among their foes was the dread realm of Angmar and its sorcerer king. No other blade, not though mightier hands had wielded it, would have dealt that foe as wounds so bitter, cleaving the undead flesh, breaking the spell that knit his unseen sinews to his will. And I'm just like obsessed with this for a couple of reasons. You know, um, like we talked a little bit about how they shouldn't have been there in the first place, and had they both listened, like the Witch King would have continued to be a problem. And like obviously, I don't want to take away anything from what Eowyn did here, but to me, this moment always feels like a little mini fellowship, like a little microcosm of the whole story. Like these two followed their hearts to do what they could do for their friends and family. Like that is. a constant drumbeat. Like, we're constantly having all of the Fellowship members, like, being like, I'm thinking of someone else, not myself in this moment. And I feel like these two are doing that here, you know, throughout the whole thing. It's talking about how Eowyn, aka Durnhelm, is, like, trying to stay close to Theoden. She obviously is, like, trying to protect him at all costs. And then we also have, like, the magic of the blades, you could say, is able to kind of help Eowyn deal that death blow to the Witch King. So they're all helping each other in that moment, so to take out this, like, massive evil. And obviously he's not as a big bad as Sauron, but he's not a tiny bad.
Not a tiny bad.
No. So I love that, like, you get this moment of teamwork here, and when it could all go horribly, horribly wrong, but we all just, you know, follow our hearts to a degree, and just like, okay, I gotta help Eowyn. Eowyn's like, I can't let him eat Theoden. You know, we're all kind of like putting our own selves to the side, and you know, Merry had no idea. Would have no clue that he had, like, a special blade that would have done that, and it's just like, right place, right time, you know, good stuff like that. And it reminds me almost exactly of when Gandalf helps convince Elrond that Merry and Pippin should come on the journey to begin with, where he says that it would be better to trust their friendship than wisdom. And I feel like we see that again here, like, their friendship and love for others and, like, each other is what, you know, ultimately leads to that victorious moment.
Gandalf's always the only one that, you know, truly sees the value of hobbits. That's, you know, a theme throughout the Hobbit and the trilogy.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of, I think, due to his nature as, you know, being a Maya, one of the Maiar.
Yeah, I think, like, there is something, so they're just so opposite of Sauron, you know, in the way that they think about the world, and sometimes not always great, but the fact that, like, they, you know, he says in the Council of Elrond that Sauron, you know, measures all hearts by the way that he is, you know, that their lust for power and stuff, and, like, they don't give a rip, they don't give a toot, like, they are just here to, like, eat and have a good time, and, like, you know, learn about their genealogies and smoke some pipe weed, you know, stuff like that. So I really love that.
And they're the only creatures in Middle Earth who really live that way. You know, it's even proven time and time again that the elves are not, you know, they too can be corrupt. They too long for power. Even Galadriel herself, you know, that's part of her early story, is that she longs to come to Middle Earth because she desires to have, you know, a seed of her own in her own, like, little kingdom.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the hobbits, even though they seem simple and, you know, unassuming, they are the purest in their way, because they just want a simple life. They just want to be happy, and they're community based.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. It's huge. I mean, it's, literally rule the fate of many because they're just so precious. And they I mean, you know, I'm sure that there are other hobbits that would have been less suited for this journey. You know what I mean? Like, Ted Sandyman comes to mind, maybe would have been worse. But overall, I think hobbits in general, they have a special quality that makes them easy to overlook, but also is something that a lot of people lack.
Right.
So I just love this. I love the, you know, like I love this moment, and I think that they present it beautifully in the film. Like, this is one of the things where I'm like, yes, the way that you changed it makes it really fun to watch, but also, like, really heart-wrenching and beautiful. But, like, I like that Eowyn gets to fight the Mumakil, like the elephants, you know. I like that they add that element to her, like, building of, like, how she's not only there to protect Theoden, but she's, like, doing her job, you know, like, she's, like, helping.
Right.
And, like,
and the films show that she's a capable fighter. She didn't just get lucky.
Yeah.
With the Witch King. She is capable on her own.
Exactly. And I think, like, with her, like, having Mary take the reins and she, like, slashes the back of the elephant's legs so that it kind of, like, fumbles and falls. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and visually it just looked awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's sick. It's like, but I do love, like, they do have, I mean, it hits, like, a lot of the same beats as the book, you know, but they just kind of swirl things around a little bit, and I think it just makes that moment with Eowyn all that more impactful.
Agreed.
Yeah. Agreed. So, I mean, those were most of my notes. We have been here for an hour and like 5 minutes. Do either of you ladies have any other thoughts about this moment in the movie, the battle in general, the Rohirrim? Any additional thoughts?
I mean, other than the fact that Eowyn is a queen, and it's a shame she never got the title. She never actually gets the title of princess. I was so mad when I realized that.
Oh.
And we're going to talk about that next time I'm here, I think.
Yes. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I was researching that recently just to see, because we know, spoiler alert, when she marries Faramir, he inherits
Wait, is that a spoiler?
Wait, you didn't? It's not actually in the books or the movies explicitly.
Yeah, so...
Whoops.
That's amazing. No, but honestly, let's talk about it a little bit, because Ahnna, I'm sure she'll tune in to the podcast when she's not on it. But, so she...
I don't think it is explicitly anywhere. Well, I think it's in the appendices.
Yeah, it's definitely in the appendices.
Oh
but, like,
gosh.
So but we do know that her and Faramir start getting some feels when they're in the houses of healing.
Feelings for each other.
So the houses of healing.
The houses of the healing.
So in the movie, right after this moment, we see Aragorn go up and he's like dressing people's wounds, which is also a sign of like the king being able to heal people. But either way, they are both been, Faramir has been struck by like a dart, and he's been poisoned, and it's taken him a while, and Eowyn has just fought the Witch-king, so it takes a while to heal from that. Mm-hmm. And they, at first Eowyn is like, whatever, Faramir, like, leave me alone, but he's like, you're so pretty. That's not what he says, but you get it. He's like, I'm digging the vibe, and she's like, leave me alone, I just want to die, and he's like, no, and, they kind of get to know each other a little bit better, and then later we find out that they do go in the book together, like, they might get betrothed in the book. We'll see it. We'll confirm eventually.
I'm trying to remember if it's ever explicitly stated, because it all blends together, like the book and the appendices all blend together in my brain.
It does, but I do know that they make a stop with, Éomer and Eowyn, and I think Faramir, when they, at the very end, like on their way back to the Shire and stuff, they stop in Edoras. And I think Faramir got with them for that part.
Long story short, Faramir gets an honorary title that says prince, so I thought Eowyn was considered a princess, and she's not. And she's not technically a princess in Rohan either.
Oh, she's just like a lady?
She's just a lady.
Lady is her title.
The lady of Rohan, the white lady of, I'm like...
Dillian, yeah.
She should have gotten a title, but okay.
Yeah.
After all of that work she did?
I know.
They call her many names, but she doesn't get the official title.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. A gross injustice.
Yeah. And we'll definitely talk about that more next time when Amber joins us for...
The Houses of the Healing.
Yeah. It's a good one. I like that chapter.
I have a lot of feelings about that chapter and compared to the film. But we will talk about that next time.
We sure will. Ahnna, did you have any other thoughts about this one?
I do not.
Okay. We just love Eowyn is the general vibe. I think.
I mean, I do think she's better portrayed. I mean, I have no reference because I didn't read the books, but
Just me telling you.
in the Two Towers, it seems like a lot of pining, a lot of everything's about Aragorn.
Yeah,
So
it's
then
too
in
much.
this one, where you get to see her be like, a little sassy and a little like she's not following directions. She's going to go ahead and fight, and as you mentioned, actually be capable, and stand out in this huge battle. I think is cool and interesting. It's one of the better parts of the movies. So
Yeah,
I'm here for it.
agree. Hard
Yep.
agree.
Yep. And as always, the extended editions are better because they cut a lot of Eowyn scenes. So.
Yeah, and somebody on
More
Twitter,
Eowyn.
they were saying that Éomer finding Eowyn on the battlefield is an extended scene. Is that true?
It's been such a long time since I've
I know,
watched
I
the
didn't
theatrical cut. Like, I don't know. I only watched the extended edition.
I know, I haven't watched the theatrical in definitely years.
I feel like it would make no narrative sense because that moment right after when they first show her in the Houses of Healing and you get that moment where Faramir looks at her, that's in the regular. I think that's in the theatrical, but them actually talking is an extended edition.
Right.
Scene.
Yeah.
I don't know. It all blurs together at this point. I don't watch the theatrical cut.
That's rough.
I don't think I've seen the theatrical cuts since I saw them in theaters.
Yeah. I specifically remember asking my mom to hold out on buying them until the extended ones came out.
I did own the theatrical cuts.
I don't even know if I did.
Then I got the extended. Huh?
I don't even remember if we bought those.
Yeah, I know I owned them, but I don't. This is so long ago.
I know. It's so confusing.
If
anyone wants to confirm what's an extended scene in this battle or not, please
I bet
DM
we can
us.
pull the list at some point.
Probably. But
someone's
I'm not
made a list already.
Yeah, if somebody else cares, they can look it up. But I probably will not. I'm just gonna say it.
We only watch extended editions. I will not apologize for that.
Yeah, and it's also like I don't want to compare the theatrical version to the books because then that's even less. Like, you know what I mean? It's even fewer scenes to.
Even less content. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess with that, next time we will be backtracking a little bit to discuss the Pyre of Denethor and our man on fire, and we'll also see more of what's going on with Frodo and Sam in the Tower of Cirith Ungol, and we should be joined by Nick, who last joined us for the Rings of Power bonus episode, so that'll be cool. And also want to give a little announcement, if you haven't picked up on it already, like we've referenced it a few times, but Ahnna is having a baby, and this will be her last episode for a while she figures out being a new mom,
life.
and also like House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. Like, how will she fit it all in? I don't know. I'm sure she'll.
Will she sleep?
Yeah.
Like baby, Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Rings of Power.
I know. Yeah, these are the priorities of a nerdy mom.
Fill your 2 a.m. feeding. 2 a.m. feedings. You just got,
Oh yeah.
Rings of Power on in the background.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll figure out when we can get her back on the podcast. No pressure on her. For now, our girl is going to get some space and some time off from podcasting while she figures this, this whole new world of like being a mom. So, I'm glad that this was your last one though, because it's a great one. Because it's a good one.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. Like, the movie does a great job. The book does a great job. It's just like good vibes all around. So
truly the only real girl power moment that we see in the trilogy.
Yeah, literally the one. So
yeah,
and hopefully there will be more in the future.
Yes, 100%. 100%. So thank you so much, Amber, for joining us. We look forward to when we can talk more.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, absolutely. We're looking forward to Eowyn and Faramir talk next time.
Ugh. Losing my head rent free.
Now I'm going to be thinking about it.
I know. Well,
they're so freaking cute. Okay.
Well, you're always welcome, Ahnna. I mean, who knows when this baby's actually going to pop out, but probably soon. So, which is crazy. I still haven't fully wrapped my head around it. I don't know about you.
Not really.
Yeah, it'll just happen.
It'll just
we don't really have a choice anymore.
It's too late.
It's too late. So, thank you both, ladies. Love you so much, and we will see you all next time.
Thanks.